right. Where is everybody today?
I don't know.
It's the holiday. I
That's
got to
true.
jump off early too because I got to get to something else.
Okay. No problemo at all. So this is, last week when we were together, we've been talking about writing books. I mean, that was a topic that came up last week. It seems to be coming up a lot lately. I did a workshop on it at the Purple Life Conference. I don't think any of you guys were in that, but and I know that Deetra has been thinking about it. We've talked about publishing journals. So I was going back and forth saying, should I show them how to make a journal in Canva and see if they can publish it, or do I tell them how to write a book? So I thought I would start with some of the foundational things about writing your book. Rachel, I know that you are a published author. And so I'm going to ask you to talk about your experience here in just a moment, if you're able to do that. Will you be ready here in just a moment to just share some of your insights?
I need like 5 minutes.
Okay, no problem. Believe me, I can talk.
Yeah.
I can talk. I can talk and set the stage and give you 5 minutes. Okie doke. So raise your hand if you've ever thought about writing a book. Okay, that would be everybody. And even those who are not present, I know that they've thought about writing a book because we've been talking about it. What do you think what are the reasons why you might write a book?
To encourage others.
Yes.
Okay, to encourage. Anything else?
Instruct and teach.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, yep. So encourage, inspire, instruct, teach. Any other reasons why you want to write a book?
Bring people to God.
Bring people to God.
Yeah, bring people to God. That's like, let them just see Jesus through it.
Yeah. Okay. So when I think about writing a book, it usually starts with a very grand vision, or, we start working our imaginations and our creative juices. Like, gosh, if I could write a book, I would solve world peace, or I would just, I would help people get out of the rut that they're stuck in, or I just want to glorify God. So it usually starts with this big grand vision. And honestly, 90% of people who imagine themselves writing a book, they never take action on it.
Yeah.
So it really just remains an idea. But I want to talk about the power of writing a book and how it helps you to accomplish those things, but also how it helps you to further your cause, your mission, and your presence in business. So just to share, so I'm a 4-time author, and I've shown you guys have seen all of these books before. Each one of these books, I look at these books and it's really like a progression, okay? The very first book that I wrote it because I had a ton of knowledge in my head about being successful in the business world, especially for women. And I had a lot of tips and tricks that I used to coach people to help them to really be successful and to build relationships, to be able to influence, and how to show up with, how to become visible, VIP. But it wasn't visions in progress back then. It was visibility, influence, and presence. That's why with this book, I talk about being a VIP, being visible, influential, and present. And so behind all of this, there was secretly a spiritual reason for publishing this book. I mean, I was a Christian businesswoman. You work in the corporate world and you understand that, at that time, church and state, very separate. Corporate and your personal life and what your spiritual beliefs are, very separate, very taboo subject to talk about. And so I wanted to just sprinkle in the spiritual aspect to this book. So it had a secondary meaning, but the spiritual aspect wasn't my primary. I mean, it was like a driver behind this. So when I wrote this book, as soon as I wrote it, I started using it in the workshops that I did, and I suddenly started getting speaking engagements. So one thing that I want to get across to you is that when you write a book, you can expect things to start to change. There is a caveat to that, though. The caveat is that, if you're actually using the book that you wrote, if you write it and you hit the publish button and you don't pick anything up, it will just kind of sit there, right? But I used it as a tool to get to the places that I needed to be. And at that time, I was really, really focused on corporate clients, not necessarily the entrepreneurial aspect of it. And so it accomplished that. This book is actually, people still buy it today. I use it and give it out during some of my higher level corporate engagements that I do around executive presence. They always ask for it for their bookstores whenever I have a keynote. And so it actively works for me. And it's not just actively working for me and gives visibility, but it's also an income stream. So that was the first book. Second book, which I absolutely loved writing this book. I had a great time. This was the funnest book to write because this was my chance to really let my creative thoughts and tools that I use to help women. I really wanted to help them. I wanted to coach them. And a lot of women don't take the time to be coached. And so I wanted to share all the tools. But this was the first time that I really shared some vulnerable stories about myself and how I use those to really try to encourage women that they can do this too. That they don't have to be in a bondage kind of mindset, that there's always an answer, there's always a solution. And so this book was also, I would say that it was a 50-50. So whereas my very first book, it was probably more of an 80-20% split. 80%, I wanted to put some tools out there and gain some visibility, and 20% was a spiritual motivation. This was half and half. So I wanted to reveal my spiritual side. I was still kind of scared, honestly. It was very risky, especially having corporate clients. It was risky to do this, but I put it out there, and I won awards on this book. I was really excited about this. So then the coming out party, this was all about spiritual warfare, favor, and faith for businesswomen, helping them to really be able to come out. I loved writing this book too. This felt like a purging. This book was really me and who I was, full expression. And then this one was the hardest book. The last one was the hardest to write because there was a tremendous amount of spiritual warfare. So I know that even though this is like a sequel or a companion to the other one, it was challenging to come off of a book like this one and write this one. So I'm telling you this because, first of all, I want you to see that if I can do this, you absolutely can do this. You can write a book. You can write more than one book. And so just writing the first book is just getting over the first hurdle. Inspiration doesn't just end with one book. You continue to live. You continue to have experiences. And so I want to encourage you just right off the bat that if you're thinking about writing a book, I want you to imagine you writing books. Books. Because there's more to your story and what God's doing in you than just one book. You're a constant evolution. You're constantly evolving in in the growth in the Lord. So Rachel's back. And so Rachel, I want to share your perspective on what it was like to write a book, and you're welcome to share everything, your struggles, your wins, how you actually pushed it past the finish line here to encourage our gals here.
Okay, so this is a little unexpected, but I'd be glad to share my story. I'm glad I was able to jump on today. I was at ministry this morning. So I wrote a book, way back in maybe like the early 2000s, that had been based on a dream that I had one night. And I had done something called NaNoWriMo, which it's this like challenge that you write 50,000 words, which is the average length of a book, fiction book, without like editing or even punctuation, which no, I don't do that. But, and then the goal is to just put words to paper and then go back and write and edit later. And so I had this book in very rough draft format for like ever. And then I was working in the corporate world and ended up going to a seminar that Angie was leading. And I won't go into all of that story unless you guys want me to. I don't want to. But she ended up giving me a 30-minute free consultation call. And one of the things that I said was I wanted, I write short stories, I write plays, I write novels, sort of, and I ended up joining once a month call with another woman, which I can't remember her name at the moment. The Tisha, but we were Tisha, that's it. Yeah. Nisha, yes. And we were both writers, and this was before we had Zoom. We were on like free audio conference call or something, and they were really an accountability to me, to say, hey, I have this book, I'm going to edit it, because I was an English major in college and knew the editing side of things, and I'm going to publish it. So I actually published it on Kindle, but Angie's right, if you don't do anything with it, nothing happens. I think I made like $3.14, but it's out there, and it's a document. I learned a lot, and I think my second one would be better because I know more about the formatting on Kindle, sort of, like I'm sure they've made updates since then. But I really, the reason that I really finished the book and accomplished it and published it is because I had accountability, and I had, people that I didn't want to let down in some ways. And, one of the biggest struggles for me is that I told some friends, we were out to dinner for like Christmas or something, and I said, hey, I'm going to finish this book and I'm going to be a published author. And the feedback that I got was, you're going to do what? Like, why would you put yourself out there? Why would you, like, seriously? And then I had published the book, and I was, sharing that it was online, and some of my friends were like really excited for me. And one of them was like, I don't read stuff written by people that I know. Just in case I don't like it, I don't want to have to give them bad feedback and stuff. And I was just like, okay, I can't tell if I'm offended by that statement or not, so I think the accountability is really important, not only for accountability, but for encouragement, for uplifting, for, you got to be around like-minded people. Now I know that God gifted me with a gift of writing. When I was in high school, I actually won a national award for my writing for a short story. So that kind of put me on a path, God has given me the ability to write some really cool plays for children, and also for a Christmas pageant that just aligned with what he wanted shared. And I could go into those, but I don't want to take up the whole time. And so I think at the moment, what I would like to focus on is for the next year, I would like to be able to publish a book, like Angie was saying, about how when you write a book, then you get in speaking engagements, on how children's ministry directors or the drama group director, whoever in their church, can take the stress out of trying to produce a play, like, okay, here's how you actually hold auditions without losing your mind, and here's how you're fair with people, and here's how you avoid the nepotism that goes along with drama, theater, and I've experienced a lot of that. So that's something and here's why we actually want to use drama in the theater in the church, but not the drama. And, because I think communication skills are a lost art with our generation that just texts and speaks in emojis,
Mhm.
and it's a great way for people to be able to take off their stressors and put on somebody else's identity for a while, and then their stressors might not seem so bad,
So
So
anything else in terms of, anything else that you learned in terms of just writing the book itself?
So I think for me, for me and my writing style, having the strict deadline of I have 30 days was really important when I decided that it was important. Like I attempted to do NaNoWriMo this year and it totally just didn't happen. But I think for me, the more you write and consistently write, the easier it gets. Like you train your brain, like, okay, my writing time is from 3 to 5 p.m., depending on your circadian rhythms or whatever, if you're a morning person, an evening person. And if you do that consistently, bye Marty,
Bye.
you will train your brain to write, to be creative at that time. I think like John Grisham, I think he was a full-time lawyer, and he just got up an hour earlier every day and wrote, and that was my big thing. Just being consistent to putting words on paper and going back and editing them later. So
Okay. So did you ladies get the worksheet attached to the calendar invite?
I have to look, because I was
I
on
don't-
my phone.
Yeah, I don't know if Cart got it to you all in time.
Let's see. Jump on.
Here it is, how to write a book.
Yes.
Oh, I didn't have an attachment. Please, I can write a book.
Is it one of two? Like there's one in parentheses, 2 parentheses.
I'm not sure. It should be a 4-page PDF.
I have a
don't have
6-page PDF. Do you want me to share my screen?
Well, it's probably because he left the Spiritual Warfare 101. I did 2 workbooks in one for, that's,
Oh, am I sharing?
Mhm.
Oh, I'm sorry.
that's okay. That's all
Yeah.
right. That's the worksheet right there. So no problem.
Okay. I will stop sharing.
Okay.
I don't have that.
Okay. Let's see. Let me send him a note here. Okay. So while you're pulling that up, what I do want to say is that in 2023, for this group, we are going to dedicate some time throughout the year to get, if you're serious about writing the book, we'll take a part of the time for this group to help you to get to that goal, whether it's writing in whatever the book is for, whether it's a journal or whether it's a book with significant content, we'll work on that. And so you'll have the opportunity to have accountability partners and help with it as we go through. So it's a good experience and you can get published, because it really is. There are a lot of reasons to write a book, and you've got to examine your heart and say, what are the right reasons to write this? But we also have to have it visible. And so you have to know what to do with the book once you write it and how to get it out there and how to utilize it. But it's going to be, it's not going to be for everybody, but it's really about thinking of your target audience. So Rachel, as you were talking and you were talking about your friends, you're not writing your book for your friends. They're probably not your target audience. And so realizing that up front is part of the key to your success, that you can share it with them all day, but they're not going to be the ones who, in this particular instance, matter at the end of the day. And one other thing that I want to say about books is I asked you to be thinking about writing books, because what I've just discovered in my own journey as an author is that one book tends to propel another. So I've noticed just on my author's dashboard through my publisher that the more I publish, the more I sell of the other books. And so the message is getting out much faster now. Whereas, when I had my first book, I mean, it only sold when I really put some purposeful marketing around it. So there's something to be said about publishing more than one. I've had almost equal sales with the book that I wrote last year, The Purple Life, that I have with the journal so far. And that my journal's the newest book out. So, and it's, you're not going to become rich. Most people are not going to become rich as authors. There are a few that they have the powerhouse behind them. They have a powerhouse publisher to advertise for them and get them out there and making them, all kinds of royalties. But I strongly believe in independent publishing if you want to get a message out. If you're really wanting to get that message out and truly inspire people. So this is the way to do it from my perspective. Okay, I'm going to go over I want to give you some tips, and this is going to page 3 of our worksheet. I'm going to give you some fill in the blanks, okay? Okie dokie. So, and it is true, writing the book is only half of the work. This is one reason why 90% of people never publish. They may even get started on a writing project, but they never bring it across the finish line because they realize, hey, what do I do once I get this book published? What do I do with it? So here's my first tip. Before you do anything, pray. I realized this after the fact, after my first book, that, hey, did I really pray about that? Or I say, oh, I think I'm going to do that. And then, hey, God, will you bless this? I'm here to tell you that it works so much better if you put God first and you listen to him. He will save you a lot of trouble. Just even seeking him about, well, what do you want me to write about, Lord? What is it that is going to be most beneficial? And I believe that, there are all kinds of books. There's all kinds of genres. It can be fiction. It can be nonfiction. It can be inspirational. It can be anything. But I've just found that if I ask God first, it just makes things so much easier. And I save myself a lot of time. Okay, number 2. Start capturing themes and stories, and then give yourself a deadline. Start capturing themes and stories, give yourself a deadline. Speaking to your point, Rachel, that giving yourself a deadline to write and having that accountability is critical. With every book that I've had, I have said, I'm only going to start thinking about themes and stories and scriptures and excerpts until this date. And after this date, I'm actually going to start putting it together. Will you have ideas that come? Yeah. But you just add that to the bottom of your list, your pool of themes and ideas, and then you can pull from that. And that's the way, I'm an ideator. I can come up with ideas. I can ideate for the rest of my life, but never put pen to paper or fingers to keys. So that's why that deadline is important. Number 3, do a prayer challenge. Most people that are publishing books, they're not going to tell you to do this. But I have found that I've gotten so much clarity about what needs to come forth by doing prayer challenges, just like the Purple Life group is doing, what we do in the 40-day prayer circle, having those prayer challenges. Dedicate a prayer challenge specifically to the book, and you will get answers. Number 4, decide who the book is for. Who are you writing to? What is your muse? People tell you, just imagine the person that you are writing to. And some will tell you to have like this person, this housewife who's been stuck in her head, they get you to get really specific about that. I try not to go that deep into it because I like to include other people. But we got to be careful about casting a wide net. Well, this will be for everybody, so there's a happy medium there. Who really is that? Who is that book for? With Purple Life, with this Purple Life, I specifically called out Christian business women. I had women in my church coming to me and say, well, I'm not in business, but I still love this book. And my workaround and what God gave me was, well, all of us as women, we're to be about our Father's business. So that makes us business women. But some women don't recognize themselves as this. So anyway, for this book, I left it as Christian women, Christian women who are going through spiritual warfare. Number 5, block your time to write. So Rachel, you mentioned this, and give an idea of what your schedule was like when you were writing.
When I was writing, it was that I was working weird hours of jobs. So I had to be really intentional that when I wasn't working, I was writing and not doing something like washing the dishes or watching television or, to some degree, when I got really close to the end, I was going to Panera Bread and sitting and writing for like 4 or 5 hours because I could like nibble on, baguette and drink an iced tea, and then they wouldn't kick me out, but I wasn't in my comfort zone of my house where there were distractions. So my time was and for me, if I knew I was blocking time to go, like physically pick up and get in the car and drive to a restaurant to sit and write, or a library, it left the distractions of being an adult behind in some ways. And I lost my train of thought. So sometimes the place is better than the time. But for me, if I was gonna write, it needed to be in longer blocks of time, because once I started writing, I didn't want to stop.
Right.
And sometimes things would flow like really, really, really fast. And there would be some times where I'd be like, I can't type a single sentence that makes sense,
Right.
and I loved those. I really feel like they're Holy Spirit moments, because there's one section in my book that I was like having like 2 gentlemen were having a conversation about salvation and why somebody died, and I was like crying while I'm writing it, and then I stopped writing it and it was over, and I went back and reread it. I'm like, I'm not good enough to have written that myself, that was so, but I have to be in that flow. I kind of have to prime the pump. So like, I can't just sit down for like an hour and write.
Right.
It's a longer block of period, but that's for me. Some people, maybe they only need 90 minutes,
Well, and it really has a lot to do with your brain wiring too, because I'm not one that can say every Tuesday from 5 to 7, I'm going to sit down and write. I'm like you. And this is true for a lot of people. You do have to get away from distractions. I went to St. George Island to kick off the Purple Life, and that was the perfect way to kick it off. And then, but just knowing when you don't want to, you can't force it. right? But you do get into a writer's rhythm. When I'm in a flow, I get excited and I'm like, yeah, I just got to keep going and typing it. And then there are times when it's just not there. And usually the beautiful thing about putting it on the calendar is even if you're not in the mood for writing, you can go ahead and go back to what you wrote just to even do some proofing. You know, you don't even necessarily have to write. It could just be, okay, I'm going to go in proof mode. So, all right, I want to get through these real quick here. All right, number 6, create your manuscript in Google or Microsoft Microsoft Docs. Double spaced 11 size font. So I've just learned this over and over, and it makes it so much easier if you do this, and it makes it easier for with the person, you know, when you get someone to format your book for you, and I have a great resource for that here, but having that together makes it easier to read. You're going to have to do less work.
So you said Google Doc?
In Google Doc or Microsoft Docs.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then double spaced and what size font?
11 size font. So
What?
one of the things about fonts is that there are certain ones that you can and cannot use without royalties. So that's a subject for another time. But I normally, when I'm typing, I'll usually use Avenir. It's a free font and it's easy to read, especially when you're proofing. So number 7, for creatives, start writing out one-liners or thoughts. You can plug it into the right chapters later. So I've talked with other authors and recognized that some are very engineering and structured and they start differently. But for those of us who are more of the creatives and visionaries, and we like it to be free flowing and maybe our thoughts aren't so organized, the best way to do it is just start like having a dump document, right? A Google Doc where you can just dump those thoughts or, you know, things that run through your head, you just capture them and you leave them there so that you can pick and choose as you start to really get writing. And that's my methodology. It doesn't make sense for everybody, but some people, like number 8, for structured people, create an outline. This is what professionals will tell you. Create an outline, then narrow it down. Outline, summary, chapters, topics, and then develop the content. So that works for more structured people. That did not work for me. I've created the structure was the last thing that I did. So.
And that one drives me nuts. I'm like, well, how do I know what the end of the story is until I've written the beginning? You know, because
Right.
my characters talk to me. Like when I was in high school, you know, we'd be in swim class and I'd be doing laps and I'd be thinking out whole chapters in my head, but then I didn't have any way to write it down. It was really frustrating.
Yeah, so it's different strokes for different folks, but either way, you can still be a successful writer. You know, whether you're creative or you're more of a structured, methodical kind of brain.
Mhm.
So number 9, be aware the title doesn't always come first. Yeah, some people, so all of my books, the title came afterwards. But I do have a title in my head for a book that I haven't written yet. And I know it's going to be called The Calm of Aaron. It'll probably be when I'm much, much older. But I have a book in me that's going to be the title. So it'll be a memoir of my relationship with my hubby and how it's grown. So, and it'll be an encouragement to Christian women, but it's not time yet for that book.
I thought you meant like Aaron and Moses.
Nope, I'm talking about Aaron M. Nuttle.
I know. I was like,
Yeah. It's a good story. It's a good, rich, meaty story. Okay, and then number 10, word counts typically fall between 36,000 and 60,000. That's really a good a good chunk of word count for your book. And you can see the word count in Google Docs. That's what I love about it. You can also see it in Word Docs. You can keep track of how many words you've typed. So number 11, always have someone else proof your book to reduce errors. This is so important. And you'll still find things like I scoured over, I had somebody edit my book, do a twice over. I looked over it myself and I still found a book where there wasn't a period in a place where it needed to be. Right. It just, those things, they happen, but it also creates a really cool authenticity to the book at the same time.
Unless it is so many that it's distracting, and then I'm like, this person didn't care enough about their book.
Yeah. Yeah. There's definitely different perspectives on it. Okay. And I have a list of resources here. These are some of the resources that I use in terms of publishing. Hemingway app. I love that app. It helps you to think through the sentences that you're typing and how you're conveying your ideas. Pauline Goff, who has been one of our members, this is what she does. She proofreads. So she is a resource. Elizabeth Thompson is my editor. She edits all of my books. She's fantastic. And then in terms of content formatting and interior, I have a go-to guy. His name's Sam. He's a Christian designer, book designer, content. He's been the one to help me to put my books together, and he's incredible. So yeah, there's all kinds of resources that we can get into the nitty-gritty, but I look at this next year and I really want to help those of you that you want to do this and you want to do it together as a group and we progress. I think it would be a really fun entrepreneur group project to do together. So are you interested in doing that?
I'm right there.
All right. Good deal. More to come. More to come in 2023. All right. So I do have here some in the worksheet. It's really more reflective kinds of questions to think about and start positioning yourself to think in terms of writing. I've asked you some basic questions. Why do you want to write? What ideas have come to mind for you? Who would your book serve? And what title have you thought of? And what would be the 3 main themes of the book? And there's another question too. What research do you need to do to support your book? So let's just have a high level discussion. You can pick any of these questions that you want and respond to it. So Crystal, if you were to, which of these questions do you have, or if you look at one of these, comes to mind that stands out to you?
Okay, where are we at again? Because I'm like,
We're on the idea sheet.
okay, because when I open it up in Google Doc, it doesn't look that. I had to go back to the PDF. Okay. When you are the
Yeah, so
sorry, get with the group.
if you've thought about writing a book, what ideas have come to mind for you?
Well, for me, it's like what ideas have come to mind is that there is healing in testimony, and there's encouragement, and it's like the Lord gives me a lot of these one-liners, and that's like, and I know that there's something that's supposed to be done with that. I just don't know what.
Are you capturing those?
Sometimes, yes. Sometimes it happens when I'm driving and I need to get like some kind of voice recording.
Mm-hmm. You have an iPhone?
No, I have an Android.
Okay. Well, I do recommend that this is a part of the document pool of ideas.
Mhm.
Is just even starting a fresh Google Doc and start dropping those thoughts in. And even if you're in your car, as soon as you come in, just drop some of those thoughts, maybe some of the one-liners that you got. I'll use my phone, I'll use the notes segment, and I'll just start dumping stuff in there. I'll even talk in my notes segment if I have an
Oh,
idea.
yeah. I think I have that. I'm gonna have to look how to get it to talk text.
Yeah. Yeah, and then you can actually upload those notes to your computer if you want.
I know. It's like, because it's like a lot of like when I'm brainstorming my ideas, it's like there's a lot of, just like, Jesus spoken parody. It's like there's a lot of
Parables.
parables. Yes, thank you. I was like, it's not parodies, wasn't the word I was looking for, it's parables. It's
I
like,
got what you meant. It was
it's
good.
like there was a P word in my brain and I couldn't find it. Sounds like, do charades again. It's like that's how he talks to me. It's like every time there's like a situation, it's like my ideals are, here's the situation that I went through, here's the lesson to be learned from it. That's like what he's wanting me to do. It's like, here is something that you went through, but here's something that you can learn and gain from that. That is the path of the book that I want, that he's telling me that I need to get out there.
Okay. Good thoughts. So Rachel, what ideas come to mind for you?
So there was a book that I want to write. I was really inspired on a family trip to Lake Wallenpaupack, which is like this huge lake where they literally bought out a town and forced everybody to move so they could make this man-made lake to have a hydroelectric dam up here in the Pocono area of Pennsylvania. And for me, I would need to do the research on what the living style was back then. Like, okay, I know they didn't have a telephone, but did they have a telegraph at that point? What were the houses really made out of? Where is the industrial age at that point? Because I read a lot of history novels. Okay, let me be honest. I read a lot of romance history novels. But I would need to research where they are in that timeline, because the thought was to write a story about a woman who doesn't want to move, and one of the corporate guys is trying to convince her to move, and how do they fall in love, but juxtapose it with maybe somebody from the current time who's doing some scuba diving in the lake, and she finds a journal or finds a diary or something from her great whatever relative.
Mhm.
So it's that flashback. So I need the research on what the time period looked like, even
Yeah.
down to like the clothing and stuff.
Mhm.
Because I'm not going to put her in pants when women only wore dresses back then. But did they wear hoop skirts?
Mhm.
So
Yeah, so that goes in up under your supporting information, even
yes.
before you even begin, what is the research that you need to support the book and to make it real, to make it credible.
Yeah. Which is honestly one of the reasons I like writing in modern time, because I live there. So
Right. Yeah, it's easier. It's easier, but I'll tell you what.
and it's easier to write about places that you know about.
Go ahead.
What?
You kind of cut out and then we ended up talking over each other. So go ahead.
I
Oh,
was going to ask you to repeat yourself.
well, I was just,
Oh,
there we go. We're having some internet stuff. Just to say that, people really appreciate the research behind, if you're doing a period piece, they really do appreciate the detail of that. It helps to draw that reader in more deeply into the story. So it's the same thing. It doesn't matter if it was in the 1800s or it was back in the time of Lydia. I had to do a lot of, when I was researching Lydia, most people look at her as a blip in the Bible, but I actually did a lot of deeper digging about her and her life and what was going on around, in terms of societal norms during her time. And so that was really valuable research that ended up being being a big part of the message that I have now with Purple Life because of that. So doing the research behind it is important.
Do you ever find when you're doing research that you kind of go down a rabbit hole? And it's like the more you start to research, the more it leads to other questions like, oh, well, what about this? And oh, well, what about that? And it's dangerous sometimes.
Yeah, I mean, it can be like a big hairy mind map that happens, and
Yeah.
it's very similar to social media. You can go on social media and say, hey, I'm going to look up this on social media, and before you know it, you're looking at reels of celebrities walking down the red carpet and saying,
Yes. Oh my gosh.
and I mean, and so research can be the same way. I mean, especially if you love it. I love digging deep in and going there and just like tunneling through all this information. But there's a door that, or there's a button that you got to push within yourself and say, okay, this, how does this relate to the topic that I'm searching on? And then if you really love where you're going, but it's not related to the book, put a pin in it and research that in your spare time when you're not researching for the book.
That's a good idea.
Mhm.
Yeah, I'll do that. I mean, I will, if I'm looking for something, if I'm on social media, I'm looking for something and I run across a really good video. Oh, that's Pastor Jeff. I want to watch that. And so my nature is, I want to watch that right now. Well, no, I can't watch that right now because I'm doing this other thing. And so I'll just hit it to my save for later file on my phone. And I'll really about 80% of the time I don't go back, and I'll discover it like a year later. Oh, I forgot all about that, so those squirrels are out there and they're real.
That's exactly what I was thinking. I was like, squirrel.
Yeah.
The little foxes in the garden.
Right. That's
It's like,
right.
every time it's like, it don't matter what I'm doing, there's going to be a squirrel run by. I'm like, oh.
Well, so that's it. That's just a quick synopsis of
Thank you.
of the book writing, and I'm asking God how exactly to do that, but I imagine that what we'll probably do is we'll segment some of our time for this group, and we'll probably call it write a book in a year. And I mean, honestly, that's really a good amount of time to to get it written and get educated on it. So
Awesome.
all right, ladies, that's all I have for today.
Yeah.
Right.
Did you guys get my mailing address?
Yes.
Okay,
We did.
Thank you.
you're welcome.
All right, ladies. Well, I hope you have a super fab rest of the day.